Hi, 8th graders. This is Miss Schlender. I'm here today to give you your first VNQ for our rock unit. And our rock unit is going to cover lots of different types of rocks, but we're going to start with the first type of rock, which is igneous rock. You should be on lesson 1 in your DINB. Our essential question is, how do igneous rocks form, and what are the two subgroups of igneous rocks? So we're going to be exploring that today in our lesson. The main parts of the notes, I will show you how to fill out this chart, but basically this chart has a lot of what you need to know about igneous rocks and the different subgroups, how they form and things like that. So we'll get to that later in the lesson. After the VNQ is done, I want you to fill out this in your DINB. It's just a drag and drop. And then after the VNQ is done, you're going to do this image search and look up these different types of igneous rocks and then decide which subgroup they're in, if they're intrusive or extrusive. All right, so let's get to the lesson. So you should be on lesson 1 in your DINB, following along. So today we are going to be focusing on igneous rocks, but since we haven't really talked about rocks yet, I want to give you the definition of a rock. Like, what is a rock? We know what a rock is, but we don't have like scientific definition. So really, rocks are usually made of one or more mineral, and they are always a solid. Basically, how we can science define this is rocks are just a mixture of minerals. So most rocks are made of minerals that are represented by different grains, and the grains are kind of like, the little dots that you see on the rocks. The grains are like those mineral crystals. So remember how we talked a couple units ago about how minerals have crystals, or they're in a crystal form. Usually in rocks, you see like a mixture of those crystals in it. So when you are like looking at rocks, you probably have noticed before that how the crystals are organized aren't always the same. They might be different sizes, different shapes, different patterns. We might have bigger grains or smaller grains, and that kind of defines the rock's texture. So you might have felt smooth rocks before, or you might have felt coarse rocks or rough rocks before, and that all has to do with those crystals, mineral crystals in the rocks. Okay, so to recap, rocks are really just a mixture of minerals. And it's pretty clear when you're looking at a rock that we have all those different minerals in there because we have different grain sizes of mineral crystals. So next slide. The 3 main types of rocks. The 3 main types of rocks are igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. ISM. You'll hear us say that a lot. We are going to be doing an ISM lab, but igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic. Today, we are going to be focusing on igneous rocks. So, igneous rocks, what does it mean? What are they? Igneous is the Latin root word for fire. Another way you can think of it is igneous kind of starts like ignite. Sounds similar. So, this kind of gives us a hint as to where and how these rocks are formed. Igneous rocks are formed from the cooling of magma and lava. These rocks come directly when magma and lava cools. So as it does that, the minerals in magma and lava start to crystallize, becomes a solid, and then it creates a rock. So the depth of cooling and the mixture of the minerals help determine how fast it cools and the type of igneous rock we are going to have. So we have this big category of igneous rocks, rocks formed by magma and lava cooling. Then we have subgroups, or like different, so like if you think of the umbrella of igneous rocks, underneath that we're going to have 2 subgroups. So the 2 subgroups, or subfamilies, subgroups, however you want to say it, of igneous rocks are intrusive and extrusive. So intrusive, these are rocks that cool in the crust. So these are usually formed from magma because magma is still in the earth. So this is a slow cooling igneous rock. It takes a long time for these to cool. Because of that, we see bigger crystals in it. Those crystals just have more time to form. And some examples of this are like granite, diorite, gabbro, kind of like what you see here in this picture. A lot of you have seen granite before. It's a pretty common rock. But as we see with intrusive rocks, we see pretty big crystals, and we can tell the difference, and there's different colors and things like that. So again, igneous rocks, they cool inside the earth or like underneath the crust. It takes a long time to cool, and we get big crystals. Next, we have extrusive. Extrusive, you can think of the word like exit or exterior. Extrusive igneous rocks cool on the surface of the crust, or really, really close to the top of the crust, so it cools pretty quickly. Because it's cooling quickly, we have smaller crystals. What we notice in extrusive igneous rocks is they usually tend to be one color, it's a smoother texture, and we have pretty small crystals, and they're very fine. Some examples of this, there's quite a few. One that I like to talk about is obsidian, because I think that one's a really interesting rock, and some of you are familiar with what that looks like. Others are like basalt, pumice, rhyolite. But when we're looking at extrusive igneous rocks, we really notice that, first of all, they're one color all the way through, and they're pretty smooth texture and really small crystals. So these are the two subcategories. So you might want to pause in your DINB and kind of think about, hey, I should probably write some notes down. This is the chart that you should be filling out. So we have igneous subgroups, origin, how it forms, and describing the crystal texture and grain size. If you want, you should pause and maybe type this information down in that chart, or you could check your work or fill this out. But this is kind of it just broken down into that chart. So we have extrusive on the top and intrusive on the bottom. So origin for extrusive, on the crust on Earth's surface, it's usually from lava. It cools fast. We have small crystals and grains, it's smooth, and it's usually one color. Intrusive, it forms in the crust or underneath, deeper in Earth, and it forms from magma. It cools slowly, and we have large crystals or grains, and it's usually a rough texture, and it's multicolor. Okay, so that's it for igneous rocks. Don't forget that you do have other slides to fill out. So I'm going to go up here. So now you know what intrusive and extrusive are. You can choose which one of these belong here. And then I would like you to look up these different types of igneous rocks: basalt, granite, pumice. Find a picture of what those look like and highlight if they're intrusive or extrusive. And those answers are in the presentation if you were listening. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks for following along, and I will just end here on the slide that summarizes everything. Make sure that you fill out that chart in your DINB and the rest of the slides. Thanks. Have a good day.